Welcome back, everyone. In recent years, families in the U.S. military have been reporting shocking conditions about the houses they rent. Hundreds are now suing some of the private businesses that manage these homes for the U.S. military. In a recent poll presented to Congress, more than half of the military families who responded had negative experiences, saying that they were living with mold, lead, and other issues. ABC's senior national correspondent Steve Osunsami and our team hear from service members who say their home is not their safe place.
Our houses are not our safe place in military housing. We were told there was no mold in our house. We were told there was no lead. We were told there was no asbestos. And they lied.
This was supposed to be my best assignment. Our home was supposed to be an oasis. It was not that.
Do you believe this house is making you and your family sick?
Yes, I feel better when I go away. And I've had my doctor ask me several times, when are you moving?
This is supposed to be a benefit to military service members, and it has turned into a nightmare.
A nightmare. That's how these military wives are describing the living conditions that the U.S. Armed Forces provides them. So here they are on a Wednesday afternoon, spending money they don't really have, traveling to Washington, begging for what they say America owes them all.
We're here for our children, for our military, we're all mothers first. Yeah.
From one lawmaker's office to another, 24-year-old Jackie Tallarico carries a binder full of pictures from her military home in Key West, Florida, showing what she says are the deplorable and harmful conditions.
Nosebleeds, vomiting spells. Right now, our families are being poisoned.
The meetings didn't always go well.
That was the first meeting that I think was a negative reaction.
You have to head back to 1996 to understand how this is happening, when Congress voted to get the U.S. military out of the housing business, approving the Military Housing Privatization Initiative. With that decision, the government gave about 14 private companies full ownership of more than 200,000 military homes, making them landlords for more than 700,000 family members stationed across the world. The thinking then was that the armed forces needed to focus on wars and jets, for example, and that the housing companies could do a better job of repairing roofs and broken toilets. But most of the housing was already in terrible shape and was going to cost as much as $20 billion to repair. So these private businesses would only agree to take the deal if the government awarded them super long contracts that stretched for 50 years. And in those contracts is fine print that matters a whole lot today. The U.S. military became the minority members in the deals, which means they couldn't overrule the housing companies when it comes to how these homes are managed and maintained.
At that point, the military was powerless to police their partner. And by and large, they just allowed the housing companies to do whatever the housing companies said was right.
This is what our home inspector found, mold in this wall.
Antoinette Reeder says that on some nights she has trouble breathing inside her own home.
These were in each of our bedrooms. It's bad.
And has reported all of this to her husband's leadership at their Navy base in San Diego. She wants us to underline that the military has tried to help by leaning on the private housing company to make things right and come repair her windows, air conditioning, and sewer drains.
Okay.
Yet she continues to find mold that she sends off to labs for testing every month. She shared with us test results that she says match the mold in her home to the same mold that she says doctors have found coursing through her veins. She showed us photos of unexplained rashes.
Looks like a jellyfish sting.
Yeah, it was a little scary when it was happening with my son.
And this isn't their first privately owned military home with issues. These are photos from their Marine Corps base in North Carolina. And again in South Carolina. Her husband has spent time fighting for his country in Iraq and Afghanistan.
You were moving from one house that had a mold issue.
Yes.
And you are once again smelling mold.
Yes, I could see, food debris that was left, from the previous resident that was painted over.
She says she saw for herself during one of the many repairs why things weren't getting better.
They were about to cover it up with a new vanity.
Without doing anything to treat the mold.
Correct.
Yeah.
And I said, that's mold there. You can't do that. And they looked at me, like they weren't here to look for that.
So the military's arm that deals with housing can't force the private contractor to fix things?
Correct.
Have you thought ever about leaving military housing?
Oh, yes. But it's very unaffordable here.
So they had to take all of the stucco off and replace
There
it.
are now unfortunate clubs of U.S. service members and their families all across the world.
I've had to move 3 times since being stationed in San Diego.
In my instance, it shouldn't have taken 4 homes, 3 moves, 2 displacements over 15 months. That should have been day 1 for us.
Travis Allen is both an airman and a man of the cloth.
Submit yourself to God.
At Randolph Air Force Base in Texas.
This is supposed to be the crowning jewel of my career.
He says he found mold and leaking sewer pipes under his home that he says the housing company had already repaired.
My lead ophthalmologist, the retina specialist, and the glaucoma specialist that I see couldn't understand why they couldn't control the inflammation and the pressure in my eyes.
They don't test every home for mold.
The usual culture here is to tough it out, but they've started raising their voices at meetings like these.
I was just getting super sick,
where the military leadership is getting an earful.
I'm hearing frustration, and I definitely know that there are issues. I see some of these cases come across my desk.
Jackie Tellerico and the families from Key West are now taking their private housing company to court.
Our people deserve so much more than this.
She and nearly 200 current and former tenants in the Florida Keys are suing Balfour Beatty, a company with one of those long congressional contracts, claiming in the lawsuit that the company repeatedly lied to them, telling them that repairs were made, knowing that the families living in the homes would likely suffer serious health problems as a result of the conditions.
My ceiling had already collapsed inches from where my child slept at night. They came in, they said they remediated the problem, and then it began to cave in again in the same exact spot. They are fixing everything but the problem. My number one fear throughout this has always been my husband's career. Luckily, his command has been nothing but supportive. Our service members give so much every day and put so much on the line for our country. One thing they should not have to sacrifice is their children and their families' life, health, and safety. When they do that every day for the rest of America.
Balfour Beatty has yet to respond to the lawsuit. We reached out and didn't hear back. In a statement to Military Times, they write that we are aware of the complaint and intend to defend ourselves vigorously. In 2021, they pleaded guilty to fraud in a federal case where they were accused of falsifying the maintenance records of military housing. The private housing company had to pay more than $65 million after prosecutors said that they lied about the repairs to pocket millions of dollars in performance bonuses from the military. The U.S. attorney called their actions despicable. We also reached out to Hunt Military Communities, the former landlord of the Texas chaplain. And in a statement, they tell us they are committed to providing affordable and well-maintained housing and that all of our processes and procedures are Department of Defense approved. In a statement, the Department of Defense tells us they need the U.S. Congress to come up with military housing reforms that hold private companies accountable to fixing these problems. And they underline that our warfighters cannot deliver if they are sidelined by problems at home.
We're not profiting off military families by cutting corners.
We sat down with the CEO of Liberty Military Housing, the company that's the landlord for the families in San Diego, and he stressed very strongly that these complaints are not the norm.
The challenge with 36,000 homes nationwide is if we're 99% right, that means there's 360 families that aren't having a good experience. That's a large number, right? And I would expect if we're 1/10 of 1%, that's a large number. And our goal is to be zero. We want everybody to be satisfied. We want everybody to be happy in their home.
He's also a former soldier and the son of an Air Force commander who grew up in military housing.
I have 5 kids, 2 grandkids. I don't want anyone living in an environment where they're being sick. So we're going to do what we can, following industry guidance and guidelines, to eliminate any hazards or risk in the home.
We asked him about federal law that allows military landlords to avoid following local housing rules and building codes when the homes are on federal land.
Because it's on federal land, it does create a different process for the legal process, but that does not impact their rights and how they exercise their rights and what our obligations are.
The families are calling on Congress to do more, and they're hoping that maybe the president might bring the strength of his office to this fight, forcing the private housing companies to negotiate new deals that do better for the American military. They tell us they're tired of feeling sick and tired.
You feel better when you leave your home.
Yes.
You feel healthier when you leave your home.
Yes.
That's not the way it's supposed to be.
Can I ask you a question? When you think of home, do you think of home as your safe place? Well, I'm terrified. We are done. We are tired of being harmed. And we are saying no more.